I'd make a Clash joke here, but it doesn't really work given that the title is If I Stay as opposed to Should I Stay, and it's New York that's technically calling and not actually London. You could say the main character is buying a stairway to heaven, but she doesn't really believe that all that glitters is made of gold. I'll stop with the music jokes now, lest I end up in and around the lake, left on my own like a rainbow in the dark. If any of you have seen my review of The Spectacular now, you may recall that I had a huge disclaimer talking about my disdain for romance films set in high school, and how I pretty much go out of my way to make sure that I don't stand up in the middle of the theater and shout BS during the entire runtime. On top of that, my expectations for the film were also somewhat low, mostly because the advertising gives a somewhat erroneous perception of what the film's about. It tries to advertise it as a romance film similar to The Fault in Our Stars, but the romance plot of it is kind of secondary. It's not really the main focus, as the main themes of the story mainly deal with how confusing life can be, because of course it's teenagers and that's a common theme, but it also deals with the idea of the kind of impacts people make on each other's lives, as well as the big theme being sacrifice. That said, the beginning is a bit slow. It does start off in medias res, but a good chunk of the story is told in alternating flashbacks. As a result, the film has to rely on expositive narration to drive a lot of its major points home, which did bother me a little bit. However, this film at least executes the narration in a way that actually works for the overall style of the film and the story it's trying to tell, as opposed to using narration as effectively a plot band-aid, something that I'm quite guilty of if you've seen some of the student films that I've produced. The only real complaint I can level against the story is that there are some moments and characters that didn't really feel all that necessary to the overall plot. They were basically introduced, said the line they needed to say, and then just disappeared. I have a feeling this is probably more or less a result of what's best known as adaptation decay, because when you're adapting something from one medium to another, things are going to be altered, things are going to be cut, things are going to be changed. So, point being, there were some things that probably had more significance in the initial novel that this film is based on that probably didn't make the translation very well, or ended up getting cut or shrunk significantly. From a technical standpoint, the only real complaint I have is namely this one annoying shot. The best way to kind of explain it is that imagine you have a drawing, a Photoshop file if you will. On one layer you have the two characters viewed from a low angle. On the layer behind it you have a drawing of a ceiling that's viewed from a perpendicular angle, making the image look flat. So basically it looks like you're staring at a wall even though it's technically the ceiling. Now that layer is behind the layer with the two characters shot from a low angle. The inconsistent perspective just triggers something that your brain is like saying something is off about this image, something is not matching up. And that's basically how I felt when looking at this shot. I mean, the low angle, I can understand what they were trying to do with the low angle. They wanted to try to get the roof and ceiling in frame because it's actually significant to the story, but the perspective wasn't consistent and it looked really weird. As for the rest of the cinematography, it's pretty decent, mostly utilitarian, but there are some shots that give the film a unique style. As for the other artistic moments of the film, well, the main thing I liked is that a lot of those artistic moments were done in service to the story, as opposed to trying to meet some sort of quirkiness quota. This is especially visible during the film's ending. I'm not going to spoil it, but the film does end on an optimistic, albeit ambiguous note, which may frustrate some people, because that's what I kept hearing coming out of theater. A lot of people were frustrated with the more ambiguous ending, because they wanted their happy ending, damn it. That's pretty much the best way to describe it. Other than that, this film is an interesting piece that is both emotional and introspective. The concept isn't entirely new. I mean, there's been tons of stories about people having out-of-body experiences in comas, being forced to choose whether they want to live or die for various reasons. But at least this film is put together with a good degree of competence and is actually pretty good if you're willing to give it a chance. Is it for everybody? Not really. If you're the kind of person who likes sentimental dramas, namely stuff like The Fault in Our Stars or Richard Curtis's About Time, then you'll probably enjoy this film. Personally, I actually kind of like this film better than The Fault in Our Stars. Now, I know that may come across as sacrilege, coming from someone who identifies as a nerd fighter, but let me put it this way. If I Stay lets the story speak for itself. It doesn't try to bend over backwards to appeal to some sort of niche teen demographic, nor does it try to work in some cutesy, annoying-looking, kitschy graphics to give the film some sort of indie or quirky feel. It's straightforward in its presentation and saves its artistic choices for moments where it's warranted, and it only does so in service to the story, as opposed to being in service to some sort of identity that executives cooked up. All in all, it's actually a pretty good film. You don't need to rush out to see it right away, in my opinion, but if you're looking for a date movie, this is probably an okay choice. Granted, this may cause the person you're dating to have some unrealistic expectations about the nature of your relationship, so my only advice for you in that case is know the person you're taking with you to see this movie and tread lightly. That said, If I Stay gets a 4 out of 5. So that's it for this episode of Romney's Reviews. Thank you for watching. I'll see you all next time.